Mr. Chairman, would you indulge me for a moment?
We indulge you every moment.
I appreciate that act of generosity. It's just something you said that I think is actually dangerous and should be addressed, and you're welcome. But when Judge Anderol was killed in New Jersey, the Republican colleagues in the Senate, their outpouring of support, their outpouring of concern, they're willing to work together on a bipartisan bill was extraordinary. It shows the truth of this institution that despite some of the fiery rhetoric that you were sowing, we're really a bipartisan, working bipartisanship. Cornyn and Coons, after the incidents you're talking about, got together and actually passed a bill to better protect our Supreme Court justices, many of whom are friends of ours. You know, Gorsuch and I disagree on a lot of stuff. I knew his wife before he did. We studied together at Oxford. This implication that there was silence when there were threats on their people's houses is absolutely absurd. I remember the rhetoric and the comments, the concern from Coons. I actually distinctly remember you, Chairman, on more than once condemning those attacks on Republican-appointed jurists. To say things like that feeds just the partisanship in this institution and feeds the fiery rhetoric. And it's just plain not true. It's just plain not true. And I think you know that, but we can pull from the record from my colleagues in real time, literally days afterwards, condemning it. There's a lot of substantive things to say here, but to think that the lack of humanity when people's homes are being threatened was not in existence, I think that's unfair and really concerns me that you would say that in the way that you did.
Well, I thank my colleague from New Jersey. I will note, as John Adams observed, that facts are stubborn things. And it is existing federal law, 18 U.S.C. Section 1507, that makes it a crime to protest at a judge's home. And the law provides whoever with the intent of interfering with, obstructing, or impeding the administration of justice, or with the intent or of influencing any judge, juror, witness, or court officer in the discharge of his duty, pickets or parades in or near a building housing a court of the United States, in or near a building or residence occupied or used by such judge, juror, witness, or court officer, or with such intent uses any sound truck or similar device or resorts to any other demonstration in or near any such building or residence, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 1 year or both. That is federal criminal law. Night after night after night, angry mobs were outside the Supreme Court justices' homes. And in the entire course of it, the Biden Justice Department prosecuted nobody. We had the Attorney General sitting at that table, and multiple Republican senators asked him, why are you not enforcing the law? What they are doing is a crime. And my friend from New Jersey said, it is a lie to say we, the Democrats, condone this. I would challenge, my friend, find a single Democrat senator on this committee holding the Attorney General to account for not enforcing this law. I was here at those hearings, and I do not recall a single Democrat senator saying to the Attorney General, you should arrest these people who are violating the law. You should protect the judges. I agree that there was general language against violence, but not a single Democrat senator that I ever saw in this committee was willing to hold Attorney General Merrick Garland to account for flagrantly disregarding the federal criminal law because the Biden administration agreed with the protesters and I think wanted those justices harassed at their home.
I really appreciate that you've now shifted the accusation you made earlier. Your accusation was that we were silent in the face of protests at Supreme Court justices' homes. Again, we joined together in a bipartisan way, not only to condemn that, but to pass legislation to extend round-the-clock security protection, literally days. It was introduced May 5th, passed the Senate in a bipartisan fashion on May 9th. So if you're saying that we didn't criticize Merrick Garland...
Did the Biden DOJ arrest a single person under this law?
You are now changing the...
No, that is what I said. That is what I said.
Again, I'll pull the record.
Did the Biden DOJ arrest even one?
Again...
The answer is no.
My point to you is the accusation that the Democrats on this committee do not care about the safety
All right, so let me ask
of federal judges. I did not interrupt you, sir. I would appreciate if you let me finish. I am sick and tired of hearing the kind of heated partisan rhetoric, which is one of the reasons why we have such divisions in this country. The attacks we see from the President of the United States of America trolling and dragging judges through is what we should be talking about, that puts people in danger. I'm simply taking issue with the claim that you made at the top that people on the Democratic side of the aisle do not care about the safety and the security of judges and said nothing. You said we were silent after people's houses were protested. That is a patent lie, sir. We were not silent. We took action. We joined in a bipartisan way to protect those judges, as was done in a bipartisan way to protect a New Jersey judge after their horrific attack at their home. So I see you now trying to shift the debate to whether we talk to an attorney general. I'm simply taking issue with this accusation that somehow we Democrats are so bad because we don't call out threats to our to our judicial colleagues. And that is wrong. You could change the argument now that you want, but what you said was patently not true and was, in fact, a patent lie.
So I do enjoy the fact that my colleague from New Jersey raises his voice and says it's a patent lie and says he's doing so in defense of lowering the rhetoric. There is some irony to doing those two together. I'll point out that in the entire course of those remarks, Senator Booker did not dispute the central point I made, which is the Biden Justice Department arrested 0 people, prosecuted 0 people for violating the criminal law, and every Democrat senator on this committee was silent about it. And this was an ongoing pattern for months. And I would note also that the senator from New Jersey clutched his pearls about language threatening judges, and yet I do not recall a single Democrat senator of this committee saying a word when Chuck Schumer went to the steps of the Supreme Court and threatened the safety of the Supreme Court justices by name, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, and he said, "You have unleashed the whirlwind and you will pay the price." And not a single Democrat senator had a word to say about this. And so their outrage is selective. And I will give my colleague from New Jersey a chance to just answer a simple yes-no question. Should the Biden Justice Department have enforced the criminal law against protesting at a justice's home? Yes or no?
So the rank hypocrisy of Chuck Schumer apologizing the next day and you holding that standard for him and not for your president, who you actually rightfully described when you were running against him in a primary. I would love to run those tapes of how you perfectly talked about the danger of our president and his rhetoric. But now you are failing, in fact, blind to the very things you're accusing Chuck Schumer of. I don't think Donald Trump would know an apology if it hit him in the head. Never has said apologizing. So again, you are very, very, sir, very, very deep into the waters of hypocrisy in your criticisms of Chuck Schumer.
So let the record reflect that Spartacus did not answer the question and did not tell us whether the criminal law should be enforced, because he knows the answer is yes. And he knows that the Biden Department of Justice was being wildly political and partisan in refusing to enforce the law because they disagreed with the Supreme Court justices' rulings.
General George, on to the birthday parade where you're going to have 24 main battle tanks and 48 armored vehicles rolling down Pennsylvania Avenue as if it were North Korea, Russia, or China. What is the total cost to the unit at Fort Caravos of moving these vehicles to and from D.C. for the parade?
Congressman, I don't know the specific cost of that one movement.
Well, I guess the total cost
right
is about
now
$35 million. So would it be safe to say about $10 million just for that movement?
I would hesitate to give you an exact number of what that movement cost. I mean, we have, I think, been very public in what it is that we expect the parade to cost overall. We are looking forward to our Army birthday next year.
Have you included damage to D.C. roads in that estimate?
We have put out an estimate of what we think everything will cost Congress.
Secretary Driscoll, you said in your opening statement that it is your responsibility to ensure that every dollar the Army receives contributes to defending this nation and for us all. How does the parade contribute to defending the nation?
Congressman, we think it's an incredible once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to expand our recruiting pool and tell the amazing story of the United States Army and the impact that it's had on the lives of
Gentleman's
Americans.
time's expired.
Congress passes the budget. Do you consider the budget that Congress passes to be a suggestion or a directive?
We believe it's a proposal for Congress to consider. We propose, and you obviously take it as a policy proposal and send it through your appropriations process.
Question, Director. Once we pass that back to you, do you take it as a suggestion or a directive?
It's a directive. We believe it's important for the congressional appropriations process to give us the levels as consistent with the power of the purse to set levels by which we can't go above.
And therefore you consider it a ceiling?
We do believe it is a ceiling.
So we send you a budget and say spend $100 on X objective. You can spend anywhere between $1 and $99 or $100. Is that accurate from your perspective?
No, I don't think it's accurate from my perspective. I think that it's much more similar to if you've asked us to perform a function and you've given us $100 million, and if we can perform it for $80 million, there is given the system as to whether we are required constitutionally, we don't believe that we are, to push every last dollar out the door and lead to use it or lose it situations where we are creating waste, fraud, and abuse at the agencies at the end of the
Congress made
year.
Provision for that. It's called a rescission. Is that accurate?
There is one tool that Congress, as one of many tools that Congress has given as to deal with that scenario.
The other tool is the unilateral judgment of the President of the United States and or yourself not to spend?
No, I was actually referring under the ICA to normal rescissions, deferrals, pocket rescissions. There's all manner of provisions in the ICA in addition to just the agency doing the work that it does programmatically to review whether the spending that Congress has appropriated to an agency within the consistent with the law, authorizing committees is there and can be done consistent with the president's views as he was elected on behalf of the American people.
Thank you. Do you believe you have traumatized the people at OMB?
No, I don't.
So, notwithstanding that, did they also get the letter sent to 2+ million people?
They did.
Was a judgment made as to how many of the people at OMB were absolutely necessary to do the job you now want to expand?
No, and in fact...
no judgment was made on that.
So as it pertains to the letter that you're referring to, it went out. I believe it went out before I was in office as the director. And I don't think we lost very few at all. And my hope was that we wouldn't lose anyone from the deferred...
But you lost a substantial amount throughout the government service without any understanding of how critical their work was to the task at hand. Is that accurate?
Well, again, it was based on their choice.
Is that accurate?
I don't think it actually is accurate because the decision was made to give the employees the chance to make that determination. I don't think it was done lightly, and I think those employees thought long and hard about whether it made sense.
I agree. It wasn't done lightly. Obviously, it was considered blitzkrieg on the entire federal government. But nobody knew whether or not critically important people were going to take that or not. Isn't that accurate?
Well, I think it's important to reflect that we don't ask employees to be in these positions and locked into these positions. There is no reason that they would have had to take that opportunity, and it's something that was not in any way compelled upon them.
Of course, it wasn't compelled, but nor did you have, or Mr. Musk have, or his people, any knowledge of who would take it and who didn't, and therefore it was simply across the board, which could have cost, let's say everybody said yes. Now, probably everybody wouldn't have said yes, but that would have been a cataclysmic event for the United States. Do you believe this is the way people should be treated?
I think all employees, political and career, should be treated with respect and dignity, and to have that reflected through all of our employment processes.
People just heard order. The people who just laughed obviously don't share that view. They're all people who were removed involuntarily, one way or another. they were traumatized. So you accomplished your objective, which I think personally is not an objective that either any personnel manager should be very proud of. How many people are in the administrative leave are being paid not to work?
Congressman, I just would push back on your characterization. It's never been my desire to traumatize individuals or workers at federal agencies.
Why did you say that?
Because you didn't actually listen to the entirety of the context of what I said. I was referring specifically to bureaucracies that are weaponized against the American people.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just very quickly, we really do not have a budget. What you sent covers this year. There's not no 10-year budget. There really isn't any vision for the future at all of what you've sent up. Director Vought, after an appropriation is enacted, the first thing that happens is before an agency can deliver the promises to the American people is OMB has to make funding available through a legally binding decision known as an apportionment. In essence, you are the first and sometimes biggest bureaucratic hurdle that stands between American taxpayers and the services, support, and protections they have promised in spending laws. And for over 100 years, apportionments were secret. Reiterate, these decisions were effectively laws that you and your also unelected predecessors made whenever you liked without accountability or transparency. I fought on a bipartisan basis, bicameral basis, alongside members of this subcommittee for 4 years to change that. We enacted simple transparency requirements because this committee and the Congress need information to effectively legislate. Independent watchdog organizations deserve the information to help the American public understand how your decisions affect their lives. 3, most importantly, the American taxpayers are entitled to see how you, your predecessors, and every OMB director, how you are spending their money. My question is, you do not think, Director Vought, that Congress deserves to know how you carry out the laws that we enact. You do not believe that American taxpayers deserve to see how you spend their money, do you?
No, I don't think that characterization is true. We do. That's one of the reasons why we come up to the Hill and testify, and we explain our decisions. We believe that apportionments are legally binding, but not final agency actions, and that it is part of a pre-decisional deliberative process on behalf of the executive branch to be able to manage agencies and the programs therein. And what we found in the last 4 years in which the law that you worked hard to put into place that we have constitutional concerns about is that it actually degraded the oversight responsibilities that OMB had, in that we would the people would actually change.
Excuse me, Mr. Director, because my time is running out. You know, in all fairness, I had this debate and discussion. I'm not just having it with you. I had a debate and discussion on this with your predecessor and others with the same argument and so forth. The American people, the Congress who legislate and enacts the laws, has to have the ability to understand what you're spending, how you're doing it, at what intervals, and so forth. And also, let me just say, this requirement, as I say, was debated for 4 years, including with you specifically during your prior tenure as OMB director. Your predecessor did comply with the law for over 2 years, and you followed this law for 2 months. What happened? Why did the website come down? Why do we not know what is happening? Why are we going back to those days of secret decisions being made by you and whomever else in terms of the spending of the dollars that we constitutionally enact here when we put these bills into law with congressionally directed resources that serve the American people? Tell me what happened. Why did you change what you were doing for 2 months or what your predecessor was doing over the last couple of years?
Well, we had constitutional concerns with the provision. We had a veto threat against this provision in the first term. If it was presented while the president was still in office, I expect you would have had a signing statement that said, not unlike our letter to the committee, not unlike the DOJ's letter to the committee, we have constitutional concerns with it. And it's something that degraded our ability to manage taxpayer resources and do the very responsible.
We passed a law, and with all due respect, again, I think the level of your honesty on your claims really shines through on this topic, and there probably isn't much more point in discussing it. But that goes at the very fact you make up constitutional issues where the Constitution places that power of the purse within this body and within an appropriations committee. Historically, it is there. But you make a decision as to what you want to do, what you think is Constitution or not Constitution without any basis in fact, thereby pulling down that website that allows us to see what you are doing. We have no way of knowing if you are carrying out what we have lawfully required the executive branch to do. That is our responsibility, and your responsibility is to carry out what it is that we have appropriated here. You just can't pick and choose whatever the hell you want and going forward, if it says. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Mr. Secretary, it's my understanding that as of today, offices in Kansas, Alaska, and Oregon are no longer operating 24 hours a day. Is that accurate?
The department employs 2,100 meteorologists and hundreds of other forecasters. Okay, this is less than 5%. We are fully staffed. There are no openings on the National Hurricane Center. Zero. It is fully staffed. We are fully ready for hurricane season, and our meteorologists
Mr. Secretary,
are fully staffed.
You did not answer
fully staffed.
You did not answer the direct question about whether those weather offices are open full time, and it's obvious that you all made a huge mistake. I mean, you've acknowledged it by having to rehire 126 people. But can you just comment on whether or not those offices I mentioned are operating 24 hours a day?
We have not made a huge mistake. I did not say such a thing.
I didn't say you did. It's pretty obvious from the actions. I will. As I said, you fired 600. You're rehired.
Inaccurate, obviously.
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 We're happy to follow up, and you can provide the facts.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I want to spend my precious time trying to understand how you think. If Vietnam, for example, came to you tomorrow and said, okay, Mr. Secretary, you win. We're going to remove all tariffs and all trade barriers. Would the United States please do the same? Would you accept that deal?
Absolutely not. Okay. Absolutely not. That would be the silliest thing we could do.
Why is that?
Vietnam has a $125 billion exports to us and imports from us $12.5 million. And you're thinking, Vietnam exports $125 billion?
I'm aware of the figures, but tell me.
But where do they get it from? They buy $90 billion from China, then they mark it up and send it to us.
So they're
just a pathway of China to us.
You wouldn't accept that deal?
No, it's a terrible deal. We're the one with money. We're the one with the store. Of course they want us to take down.
What's the purpose of reciprocity then? Is reciprocity not one of your goals? Are you telling the president that we shouldn't seek reciprocity? If that's what you're telling him, why are you trying to do these trade deals?
What do we want? We want to encourage Vietnam to produce products they're great at producing.
But I want to get back to reciprocity. You just said you don't believe in you don't accept reciprocity as a goal. What are you negotiating in these trade deals?
Why would we open our bank account and their bank account when ours is 10 times bigger?
Why are you negotiating trade deals? You're trying to get other countries to lower their tariffs and trade barriers in return for us lowering ours.
That's true for the things that they'll take from us.
That's called reciprocity.
Of course.
So are you or are you not seeking reciprocity in these trade deals?
We are absolutely seeking reciprocity with respect to things that can be reciprocal.
But you just said,
but when they're importing from China and sending it to us, they're not.
You just said that if a country came to you and offered you the ultimate reciprocity, no tariffs, no trade barriers, in return for us doing the same, you would reject that.
Of course, because they buy from China and send it to us. Don't you agree with me?
Suppose they said we won't buy from China.
Now we're talking. If it was Vietnam.
Would you accept that deal?
We would consider it for what things? For
what
products?
What would you want to change?
Well, there are certain products we want to reshore. We don't want other people making them. We want to make pharmaceuticals here.
Right.
We need to protect ourselves from certain things.
Let me ask you this, because I'm going to run out of time. Our trade deficits, are you advising the president that trade deficits are always bad in every situation?
No.
Okay. When are trade deficits good?
Trade deficits, for instance, let's say there was a company that had the cure for cancer. Let's call it Cancer Cure. And we were buying it and it was located in another country. We would obviously have a trade deficit with them because they have the only one of it. An example, our technology companies, our great technology companies, we're the only ones with it.
So a trade deficit is okay if they're products we really need.
If they're the only ones with it and we can't do it, then of course it's fine. But if we can do it, then we darn well better think about whether we're supposed to do it and whether we want to do it and if it's in our interest as a country to do it.
Here's where I'm getting at.
I'm going to give you another example of how we can use tariffs. We want peace. We're not out to humiliate Putin, but we want to stop the killing. To China, you're propping up Putin's war machine. You're the largest purchaser of his cheap oil. You're providing component parts to his military. You want to be normal? Act normal. We have legislation in the Senate that would have put a 500, make you look weak, Howard, 500% tariff on any country that props up Putin's war machine. And we'll have a carve out for any country helping Ukraine. You're good to go. So China, if you want to avoid tariffs, help Ukraine. This is coming, Howard. We've had it with this war. I appreciate President Trump talking to Putin, sending Witkoff over, trying to make it a win-win. He ain't interested in peace. So the Senate is ready to roll. And to our friends in China, if you keep helping Putin and propping up his war machine, we're going to hit you hard because you're destabilizing the world. You're putting our nation at risk. You're rewarding bad behavior. And we're going to extend the concept President Trump started. If you're screwing America and you're making the world an unsafe place, we're coming after you. Thank you, Howard, for all you do.